I've been using the AKG K240 studio headphones for quite some time now, over 6 years. I think the big draw to these headphones, besides the social proof, is the design. You know, it does look a little bit old, but it's a very smart design. We look at this adjustable headband, and it's made out of a material that isn't going to start peeling like a lot of headphones will when they get older. You know, this pair of headphones I've had over 6 years, and there is no peeling. And it's pretty comfortable too, honestly, even though it's not filled with, you know, some cushion that you might find on other headphones. This is still pretty comfortable. The semi-open back design is a nice balance between open back and closed back, especially if you're a singer like me. I need to hear myself audibly in order to perform at my best, and I'm sure there's other singers too. So this is a nice balance because I can hear myself, but there's also not going to be a ton of headphone bleed getting into the microphone when I'm tracking my parts. This removable cable, a very nice touch. On my previous, go-to headphones, the cable's frayed and ended up ripping eventually. And fortunately, this has not happened with the AKGs. This is the original cable. If there was an issue, I could just replace it, which is a really, really nice design. Pro-consumer move, in my opinion, as well. Now, I'm no expert in headphone design, but what they have going on is very rugged. Some people said it kind of feels like a toy, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just because it feels like a toy doesn't mean it's not durable. These headphones have survived over 6 years of regular use, and just the way that it's constructed and the way that it bends, it really feels like it could hold up over some abuse. The build quality and design of these headphones are definitely the strong suit of them. There's been no major issues except for the ear pads. Now, I wouldn't call it a major issue, but they are starting to crack, which is kind of something you would expect with age. But even though they're starting to crack, they were never the most comfortable. If you plan on using these for long sessions, I highly recommend switching out the ear pads with something aftermarket. Fortunately, you could take the stock ones off and get something newer, something more comfortable. These aren't necessarily uncomfortable. It's just during the long sessions where you start to run into some issues. I can wear these for about 2 hours before they noticeably get uncomfortable. Something about the ear pads, not as thick, and eventually I just feel like there's pressure on my ear, almost like it's too close to the grill and that's like protecting the speaker, or just, it's squeezing my ear. It's not the most comfortable. When I first put them on and do maybe a 1 hour session, no issues at all. They're fairly comfortable. It's those longer sessions where you're gonna want some aftermarket ear pads, something more comfortable. Where these headphones kind of start to fall off a bit is with the frequency response. They don't sound bad, but they do sound a bit flat and neutral, which is both a good thing and bad thing depending on what you're doing. The bass is just not as prominent as I would like it to be. So if you are mixing, bass guitar or just low end in general, you're probably gonna run into some problems. I wouldn't rely on these solely for doing, audio work or mixing that relies on listening to the low end. It's always good to double check your work on a different source, but with these headphones, it's kind of a must. Now, that isn't to say these are bad, far from it. Just be aware that the low end might be a bit lacking, and even the high end sparkle isn't quite there. You're kind of missing out a bit on the treble, at least to my ears. SonarWorks has a quick little blog article, and on that article, they have a frequency response graph. You can kind of see the mid-range bump, the kind of low end roll off. And it's interesting enough, about 6K and above, you'll start seeing some spikes, but to my adult ears, I'm really not hearing it. I think maybe the dips in the other upper mid areas is kind of what gives it the flat sound, along with the bump in the mid range. So that gives you a nice little visual representation, but honestly, hearing is, a much better real world scenario than just looking at a graph. And they are a bit flat sounding. I'm not the only person that says this, but they're not necessarily bad. Because in front of me, I have studio monitors that I'll often mix on, and they're kind of the opposite. I intentionally boosted the low end and the treble so I can kind of hear issues in the low end and issues in the high end more clearly. And these headphones are kind of like the opposite. They're more mid-range focused and flat sounding, so they're excellent for kind of checking my mixes, my audio production, making sure that they sound good on something that is a little bit more neutral sounding. When I use these two together, they complement each other, and they really do enable me to mix to the best of my ability. Now, who should get these headphones? As always, it kind of depends. These are going to be great for anybody who needs reliable, rugged headphones that can kind of withstand some abuse, especially if you're going to be buying a few of these for a studio environment or a work environment. These are going to be great for vocalists and most scenarios where Closed back headphones are not essential. These are also going to be great to, check your mixes on if you need a neutral sound. Kind of like I was saying earlier, these are great to reference your mixes on, your audio productions, anything audio related. Now, these are not going to be great for like critical listening. The combination of like the low end roll off that you kind of, hear, and just the fact that they're semi open back and not closed back, it's kind of a double whammy. It's not going to be the greatest. Because if you're in a listening environment where there's, just like ambient noise going on, maybe there's TV going on in the other room, you got an air conditioner going on, they're semi open back, but all of that is going to bleed into your headphones. You're going to hear that. And when you really need to focus on the work, you're going to have to turn up the volume, maybe a little too loud. It's something, a little louder than you're more comfortable with. And, we don't want to be turning up the volume to the point where you might be damaging your hearing. And when you really need to listen for and edit things like plosives, where like the low end is, really something you need to hear, you might not be able to hear everything clearly with these headphones because of that low end roll off it seems to have. Now, I have done critical listening and critical editing on these headphones with some success for the most part. It's just not ideal. And I do end up checking my work on other sources, so it can be done. I just don't think it's ideal. So my final thoughts, I think these are really great headphones. I do think they're a little bit overrated on the audio quality, but overall these are excellent headphones. They retail for about $100, but I'll see them go on sale for about $50. And getting them for $50 is quite a good deal. Honestly, $100 is a bit much for what you're getting. The rugged durability is really nice, but the audio quality, not bad. But having that low end roll off and just having some issue in the high end that I personally have with it, kind of a lot for $100 in my opinion. Usually, I'll always recommend buying from Sweetwater, but honestly, you can find them for even cheaper on Walmart's website, and it's sold through AKG. So don't expect any calls from Walmart, but if you're on a budget, Walmart is probably going to be a better place. Definitely shop around. I do think $100, it is a bit much for a design that came out in 1975, and in some cases doesn't quite hold up at that price point. Sound quality, not quite there. Everything else is fantastic. I am being a bit harsh on the sound quality, but it's not bad. I just feel like a lot of people kind of overhype the audio quality on these when it's very flat and neutral sounding, at least to my ears. So what do you think? Does this sound worth it to you? Do these headphones sound worth it to you? Have you used these headphones before? Definitely leave your comments down below. It's always nice to hear from everyone. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I do hope to see you in the next video.